Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ALT's live series on Facebook, all about land conservation and protection in the city of Attleboro. My name is Evan Foster, and I'm the TerraCore member for the Attleboro Land Trust. Today is actually our last episode of the series, which is pretty exciting, and we have a great guest, Kathi Gariepy. So Kathi is a teacher who has taught in Massachusetts public schools for Mass Audubon, Massachusetts Horticulture Society, and trustees of the reservation. She has been a master gardener for more than 20 years, has written gardening columns for many publications, and has spoken to hundreds of organizations throughout New England on nature and gardening. She is also on the Conservation Commission in Attleboro and currently teaches adults and children about the wonders of nature that surrounds us. So we're really lucky to have her here. And I will pull up her presentation and I will hand it over to Kathi to start. Thanks so much for being here, Kathi.
Thank you. Today I'm going to talk about bugs in your backyard, because even though we only hear about the nasty ones that are out there, the ones that are attacking everything, there are some really great ones out there. So next slide, please. So I wonder if anybody knows what this is. When I first saw it years ago, or saw one similar to that, I thought it was a little alien alligator and I must squish it. But I did not. Thank goodness, because this is actually the caterpillar or the larval stage of a ladybug. And in this stage, it eats 5 times more aphids and soft-bodied bugs than does the adult. Next slide, please. So this little guy is really good to have around, but this is the adult form of the ladybug, and what we just saw was the caterpillar or the larval stage. Next slide, please. Most insects, in fact, 83% of all insects, go through what is called a complete metamorphosis. In other words, everybody knows the stages of a butterfly: egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, butterfly. Well, most insects go through that egg, larva, pupa, adult. And during that larval period, what they do is they need to eat so much, they need the energy to change into the adult. So I like to say that it starts off as a baby, as the egg. This is when I'm teaching little ones. And then as a teenager in the larval stage or the caterpillar stage, they eat and they eat and they eat and they eat. And then they go away either to college or they go and they get a job and they're very quiet for a while. And then they come back as an adult. So to use what I teach the little kids is they go through changes throughout their life. It's the same insect, but it changes. And remember, 83% of them do that. So all of the beetles, the butterflies, and they go through that change. Sometimes in their larval stage, we don't really like them. But most of the time, especially for ladybugs, we really like that larval stage. Next, please. Now, ground beetles. Everyone's going, oh my gosh, these big, black, sort of metallic-y sheened insects are in the ground every time I do anything. But they are actually very, very good. In the larval stage, remember that is where they need to eat an awful lot, they kill slugs. In the adult stage, they sometimes are breaking down all of the wood and other things that fall on the ground, the leaves and all. And they're very important to have around so that they help decompose and they also help get rid of unwanted pests. Next, please. The praying mantis. This insect does not go through that complete metamorphosis. It's one of the very few that does not. It just starts out as a teeny tiny insect. Next, please. That you can see on that fingertip. And it grows and grows and grows throughout the summer months. It overwinters in an egg case, and some people have seen these on branches, sometimes on the side of the house, sometimes within a pine tree, and in between each one of those layers are many little tiny eggs that mature over the winter. And in the springtime, they hatch out. They're practically see-through. Now this insect, the praying mantis, eats all different types of very big other insects. Unfortunately, it's sort of an indiscriminate eater in that it will sometimes grab a honeybee or something that is good, but it primarily eats insects that we don't want to have around, insects that are pests in the garden. Next, please. A lacewing bug. There are brown lacewings and green lacewings. This one happens to be a green one. In their adult form, they do eat a few little insects, but where they eat the most, again, is in their larval stage. And most people, when they look at something like this, they go, oh, kill it, step on it, squish it. But it, again, is eating all those soft-bodied insects that we have in the garden. So what you're looking for is this nice balance between the beneficial bugs and the bugs that we really don't want that do damage to our plants, flowers, vegetables, and trees. Next, please. Now, if you have tomatoes, you've probably seen a tomato hornworm, but if you see it with these little white things on the back, it is actually the host insect for these particular brachnoid parasitic wasps. And what they do is that little tiny wasp that looks almost like a flying ant lays its egg at the head, just behind the head of the tomato hornworm. And when they lay the eggs, the little larvae go through the insect. I know, it's disgusting. But they then pop out as little caterpillars and then swirl around and make their little cocoons for them. Once, years before there was before we had camera phones, I was doing a program for little ones about how caterpillars went through their complete metamorphosis. And I was bringing in all the tomato leaves to fill up the big container that I had for this particular tomato hornworm. And all of a sudden, it started sort of writhing up and down, and out popped the little caterpillars, and they started swirling around. It was the most disgusting and fascinating at the same time thing that I had ever seen. And it actually is very good if you have those little parasitic wasps, because it weakens the tomato hornworm. So don't squish them when they have those little cocoons on the back of them. Next, please. Dragonflies. Dragonflies are probably one of my favorite insects. Not only are they beautiful, but they eat mosquitoes at all stages of their life. They lay their eggs in the water, and the picture, the brown little insect there, is actually in the nymph stage of the adult dragonfly. And under the water, it eats mosquito larvae. And when it gets out of the water, it eats more mosquitoes. It is one of the fastest insects. It can go backwards and forwards, and it catches its meals on the fly. It is an absolutely fascinating insect to watch. And we have in this area more than a dozen different types that come out at different times of the year. And I love to watch them in the evenings where they're just whizzing around. catching all of the mosquitoes and all of the other insects that we really don't want to have around here. So dragonflies are a wonderful insect to watch and have in your own backyard. Next, please. Bees. There are so many different types of bees. Honeybees, carpenter bees, hoverflies, solitary bees, sweat bees, bumblebees, that you could do a whole presentation just on different types of bees. Bees are so important to us for our food because they say that every third bite that you take, you can thank a bee for being a pollinator. If we did not have bees to pollinate, we would be in big trouble. So bees are now our friends. They always have been our friends, but there was a little cartoon that I saw once that had a person bumping into a bee saying, "Oh, can I get you anything? Do you want some water? Please stay here. This is my garden. We're so happy to hear you." As opposed to when I was little where everyone went, "Oh, bees, we don't want bees." But what I tell children and adults is that if it says bee in their name, they're your friend. Yes, the hornets, the wasps, and the yellow jackets have a place in the whole ecosystem, but the bees are generally fuzzy and they are great pollinators. Next, please. Monarch butterflies. Everybody knows about monarchs. So just to let you know the difference between the males and the females have much darker and thicker lines in the orange areas, whereas the males, they're much thinner and they have that little bar on either side of the wings to help differentiate between the two. Next, please. Monarchs and all butterflies are incredibly host specific. So in that caterpillar stage, they need a host plant. And I think that everybody knows that monarch butterflies eat only things in the milkweed family, the Asclepias family. This is a monarch caterpillar on common milkweed, the one that has the sort of dusty pink clusters of flower that actually smell very nice. The fragrance is lovely. This particular type, the common milkweed, is really good because the leaves are so much larger. Next, please. Than the ones that we might find at a nursery. So the swamp milkweed has a lovely flower. Its leaves are a little bit thinner. The monarchs will still go to these plants and the caterpillars will still eat the leaves, but the big, huge, broad area of the common milkweed, which yes, it does spread, and if you do have it in your yard, give it plenty of room because it grows from underground runners and by seed. And then there is also the butterfly weed, which is more of a garden plant, which is much shorter, is another wonderful plant. And once it gets established, they grow by sort of like a taproot. They will form big, huge colonies at the front of the garden border. There is another plant that is out there that is not a good plant to have around. It is called black swallowwort, and unfortunately, it is sort of a distant cousin to the Asclepia family. Its flowers look the same, and that's how all plants are grouped together. It's by how they reproduce, by what their flowers look like. This flower looks almost like it, and unfortunately, if the monarchs lay their egg on this particular plant, the little caterpillar will die because it doesn't have the correct toxins in it. And that's the reason why the monarch butterflies are so brightly colored, not only in their adult form, but in their caterpillar form. And that bright coloring is telling the birds and the other predators, don't eat me because you'll be very sick. The sap that is in the milkweed stays within their body and acts as a toxin to the birds around there. So that's why it's brightly colored. Next. This is the chrysalis for a monarch. It's just an amazing thing. It looks like it's touched with gold. And if you ever see one, just let it alone. Come back and look at it. And let the butterfly do what it does naturally. Next, please. Now, these two butterflies are not the same. They look almost the same. And that is something that the one on the left, I'm hoping that it shows up the right way, that you're seeing it the way I'm seeing it. The one on the left is actually a viceroy, and it's actually much, much smaller than the big monarch. And you can tell that this is a female monarch because there's no little bar down there and the lines are much broader. On the viceroy, the lines are far more even. The butterfly is much smaller. And what it is doing, it needs some form of protection, just like the monarchs are saying with their bright colors, don't touch me, stay away, you'll get very sick. This butterfly is mimicking the butterfly, the monarch butterfly, and it's a viceroy. So the viceroy comes out around here a little bit earlier than we would see monarchs. So that's another way you can tell what it is. Next, please. So this is the viceroy. You can tell by its caterpillar form, it actually looks like bird poop. And that is a way of it being camouflaged. It eats willow, so definitely not like the monarch that eats only the milkweed. And it's a little bit smaller. Next, please. This is the Baltimore checker spot, a very, very pretty, smaller butterfly. Its only source for the host plant is the white turtlehead. The pink one, the pink turtlehead, is available at garden centers all the time. It's very, very pretty. But the only one it wants to eat when it's in its caterpillar stage is the white one, which is a native plant. And the plants that we'll be seeing that are host plants are all native plants. So the more native plants you can get in your yard, the better they are. And the more interesting things you'll see. Next, please. This is the great spangled fritillary. This one is about the size of a monarch. It, in its caterpillar stage, looks very, very spiky. Again, they're trying to ward off being eaten. So if it can look ferocious or look like, saying that it's broadcasting that it has different stripes so that it shouldn't be eaten, or if it has spikes so it might not be as appetizing to birds, that's why it looks like that. This one, its host plant is the common violet. So having those little violets around your yard that you go, oh, I really don't want those in the grass, maybe there's a place in your yard where you can have a few violets so that that can be the host plant for this really nice big butterfly. Next, please. The morning cloak. This one you generally see earlier in the spring. Its host plants are things like elms and, let's see, willows and sometimes aspens. And it has a very interesting caterpillar, again with the spikes, and then this dark thing, dark wings, very, very pretty. Next. The black swallowtail. I grow an awful lot of dill and parsley in my yard, and every year I go out to the dill and fennel and check to make sure that I have some black swallowtail caterpillars on there. And I am so happy. So sometimes when you're growing certain plants, understand that butterflies won't eat everything, unlike moths. moths take over and they overproduce their eggs, and generally, especially things like eastern tent caterpillars or the other ones that just eat all of the leaves in sight. Generally, butterflies don't decimate a plant and they don't really kill it. They might eat an awful lot, but generally not enough to just wipe it out. And I've had some of these in my backyard already this year. Next, please. Now this is the difference between the two different caterpillars. So the one on the stalk eating the milkweed is the monarch, and the one eating, I'm not sure what it's eating, but it's the black swallowtail butterfly. So just to show you the sizes. And right there, they're probably about as big as your little finger. Next, please. The eastern tiger swallowtail. This is another very pretty butterfly, big, huge one. And it is probably one of the biggest and one of the ones that you see most often. Now on here, it has these little false eyes, and they are there, again, to scare off the birds. Next, please. Probably my favorite one, because it has those big, huge false eyes, is the spicebush swallowtail. Its host plant is the spicebush, not a really remarkable plant in the landscape, but in the spring, it has little yellow flowers very, very early, earlier than Forsythia. And the bees just love that, which is wonderful, something for pollinators early in the year. In the middle of the summer, if you see any leaves on there that are folded up, just curled up, look very carefully in there, and that's where the spicebush swallowtail hides. And again, it just peeks out its head to sort of let the birds around there that would be feasting on it, that it's actually a snake, or it's pretending to be a snake. And then it goes back in and hides. So the birds are fooled into thinking that, ooh, there was a snake over there, so I'm not going to go there. And that's its form of protection. So the lindera, the spicebush, later on in the season, has these little red berries, which are great for the birds. By then, the spicebush swallowtail caterpillar will have turned into a spicebush swallowtail butterfly. And so that one shrub does an awful lot of things in the garden for you. Next, please. Now, what can we do to have butterflies stay around our yard? These eastern tiger swallowtails are doing what's called puddling. They're looking for a little puddle to get some moisture. And after the rain that we've had lately, we have a lot of moisture hanging around here. Next, please. So you could, in your garden, make a puddling spot. Take something like a bird box, clean it out, and put in a little water, but make sure that there are rocks for it to land on, make the butterflies to land on. By putting rocks or even marbles, those can be easily cleaned. You can allow insects, beneficial insects, to get a little bit of water that they desperately need during the hot summer months. Next, please. You could get a bee hotel or make a bee hotel. Just make sure that after a season that you clean things out, because you don't want little viruses to overwinter. But these bee hotels have become very, very popular, and you'll see things like little carpenter bees poking their heads out, and sometimes just getting a little bit of rest in one of the little holes. Next, please. Plants are one of the best way, and native plants are the best way to attract insects to your yard. Agastache is in the mint family. Mountain mint, which is probably the best way to attract pollinators to your yard, also in the mint family. Generally, when you see things are in the mint family, they need a little bit of space. They will take up a little bit of real estate in your yard. So if you have about 3 feet across, mountain mint would be wonderful. Not showy flowers at all. Little tiny white flowers that will attract pollinators from everywhere. It has sort of a downy white wrapped around it, and it's just in your garden a nice place for all of the pollinators to go. And if you're designing things with different colors, a nice soft resting area. Agastache and bee balm, Monarda, are 2 other plants in the mint family. Great plants. They also have this tubular shaped flower, which is wonderful for not only butterflies, but also for hummingbirds. Later on in the season, there are things like ironweed and goldenrod, 2 more natives that are great for pollinators. Ironweed can grow up to 7 feet tall, has this deep purple flower, and just makes a statement. Again, a lot of these plants want a good clump in your yard, but goodness gracious, standing ironweed is spectacular in September. Just looks magnificent. And of course, purple coneflowers, Echinacea purpurea. That's the purpurea right there. And there's also another one, which is the prairie coneflower, which is has the reflex petals in it. And both of them are great. Monarch butterflies absolutely love all of these plants. Next, please. And then we have a few more plants to add. New England asters, another great one, a late season one when not too many things are blooming. New England asters in shades of purples and pinks are absolutely wonderful. And that purple color, that bluish purple, is something that insects really hone in on and really can find very well. Yarrow, all different types of yarrow. This one is, I believe it's moonshine, and it has that flat umbel that insects can land on readily. The Laertius, a great butterfly magnet. And then the catmint. It's in the mint family. It has a square stem, and not only do bees and butterflies like it, but hummingbirds also love it. I have a variety of catmint that blooms fairly early in the year, and it's at the back of my house, which is a southern exposure, so it will bloom even earlier. And my hummingbirds go to that first before they go to the hummingbird feeders. Some annuals are really great too. The borage, where the bumble is a great herb for the garden. It also has that blue flower, and the bees just love it. And another nice old-fashioned plant that's an annual that's very easy to grow is cosmos. The bees and the butterflies absolutely love it. So you can plant all sorts of things to attract all sorts of beneficial insects to your yard. And just understand that sometimes those creepy crawlies that we see are not to be squished. They're actually doing a lot of good things for our yard, our gardens, our vegetables, and our flowers. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was a lot of information, and I think I would speak for everyone that it was very informative, and I certainly learned a lot. So I really appreciate that. So I was just gonna ask you a couple questions. If anyone does have any questions that pop up while we're talking, feel free to put them in the comment section, and I'll read them out to Kathy. Yeah, so I wanted to just continue. You were kind of expressing like what we can do, and I was wondering if you had any resources or anything you could point people to about maybe specifically like planting native plants in your garden. I don't know if there's a book or something you use, but yeah.
We have a wonderful resource that is in Massachusetts, and it's Garden in the Woods, and it used to be called New England Wildflower Society. Now it's Native Plant Trust, and they have a website, and they also have a place where you can buy plants, which the more native plants you have in your yard, the better it is for everything and everyone. They are absolutely wonderful. For butterflies, the Xerces Society, they have a great website. And if you're looking for different plants, not that there aren't a lot of great websites out there, but if you want to go to any of them, look for generally your land grant colleges. So like UMass, Amherst, anything that says EDU at the end, a lot of them have really good information.
Mm-hmm.
So UMass Amherst, UConn, URI, UNH, they all have very good information for this area.
Mm-hmm.
When you get down to out to Michigan, they probably have the same types of information, but actually the northeast quadrant of the United States
Okay.
is would be really good, and then specifically anything in the New England area would be great to go to.
Great. That's great. It's good for people to know where to go. So we do have a comment from Jimmy, who just was expressing some appreciation for your knowledge, and saying that he thanks you for taking the time to talk about this stuff. And I'm sure he's speaking for a lot of people, because we all do appreciate it. Cool. So yeah, I was wondering, going off of that, I think it's important for people also to realize that you don't have to planting, maybe just pick like one native plant that you kind of want to focus on and trying to plant that. Like, it doesn't have to be this huge, like, transform your entire yard into this like adventurous, crazy thing. You certainly can if you want to, and it would be awesome. But there is a place where you can have like your green grass lawn. You can enjoy that, and then maybe take a section where you do plant those beneficial plants. I don't know if you have other thoughts about that, but I feel like it's important for people to
even things like if you plant a few shrubs.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain native shrubs like the spice bush.
Yep.
Calendula benzoin is always a great plant because it's the host plant for a butterfly. It serves the bees early in the spring when they're looking for something,
Mm-hmm.
and then the birds later on in the year. Some of the viburnums are great shrubs to plant, so you don't necessarily have to do the gardening, the down in the dirt all the time gardening, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do larger shrubs that will serve a purpose.
Cool.
If you really are into it, you could have plants blooming in your yard from February with the very early crocus, the species crocus, all the way through to November with the late blooming chrysanthemums, and have something there for the insects. You could plant some native witch hazel, which is a big plant, even though it's an understory plant.
Yeah.
A huge vase-shaped shrub that is technically an understory shrub, but it blooms in November, so it takes care of those late plants, late insects rather. You could also, if you just want to try out a few things, even though it's not a native plant, you could try some zinnias because they bloom later in the year. And when I was doing trials for certain zinnias, the butterflies that I got buckeyes, I got painted ladies, I got all sorts of different ones because they were coming through and attracted to different things.
Mm-hmm.
So pick a plant, pick a time, and just see what comes into your yard. But understand that not all bugs are, I hate to use this word, but not all bugs are bad bugs.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah, I'm also wondering if you can talk a little bit about how critical it is for plants to have pollinator species around. I know we're talking a lot about kind of attracting insects so that they can kind of prosper, but it's very much a mutual relationship where the more insects, the plants are also benefiting from that because they are getting pollinated. Yeah.
Well, if you want to have a vegetable garden and you want to have any sort of fruit, and fruit by the botanical definition is anything with seeds in it.
Mm-hmm.
So a tomato is a fruit, a cucumber is a fruit. You have to have a pollinator.
Mm-hmm.
And the best gardens, vegetable gardens, also have some sort of flower garden with it, because the flowers will attract the pollinators and then spill over to the vegetables.
Okay.
So it's sort of mutually advantageous. And as I said before, every third bite that we take is the result of a pollinated plant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something out there, and attracting insects to the yard, good insects that are beneficial,
Mm-hmm.
Is actually very, very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Not spraying pesticides all the time, looking to see what would be the best thing to do for them. If you do get insects that you don't want, like aphids on the tender new growth of a plant, you can buy things like ladybugs. You could buy praying mantis egg paste. You can buy green lacewings. I, many, many years ago, bought some ladybugs. And if you do that, all you need to do is water the area, because they're thirsty after their long journey. If you've been through the mail for a long time, you would be thirsty too.
Mm-hmm.
So water to help them stay. And then they realize, hey, there's food here for me. And then they start going up. And what you want them to do is go through that life cycle of egg, larva, pupa, insect. And again, in that larval stage, they will help take care of everything. But they will fly away, because once they take care of everything, they're on to the next place because they have to eat too.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I know the Attleboro Community Garden had the ladybug release recently. I wasn't able to attend, but I heard really good stuff about it, and it seemed like an awesome event where they released so many ladybugs, and similar idea what you're talking about. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
So I had a question that I jotted down while you're talking. I'm wondering if you specifically about butterflies, they're pretty, I guess, complex life cycle, just with the various steps. Are they more susceptible to the changing climate, or is it kind of the same as any other kind of species or animal?
I know that the monarchs, because they have to travel so far, and they go through, I believe, 3 or 4 generations each summer.
Wow.
So they just keep their habitat where they overwinter. They is sort of in danger.
Okay.
So when they come back up here, because they overwinter in Mexico, when they come back up here, it's a timing thing. But when you're talking about animals, birds that are coming from down in South America, and they're going to stop over right about here before they go up to Canada and then come back. So when all the songbirds come, there are insects that they're looking for out in the woods. And if we have gotten warmer earlier those insects are not going to be there to supply the protein for their young when they hatch out. So it's a timing thing.
Okay.
And everything is so interconnected.
Yeah.
It's really a very delicate balance that we have.
Definitely. Great. Well, I like to end with asking kind of a more personal question. So do you have any favorite bug or like insect or something that or maybe a host plant or something like that that you really have been attached to or had a really cool experience with?
I have quite a few spice bush in my yard, and any garden that I've ever designed, I always put them in there, and that's one of those, if you plant it, they will come type of shrubs, which is really neat, especially if you have little ones, that they can go out there and they can look very carefully for the caterpillars, because they're just an amazing thing to see.
Cool.
I like monarchs. I've been raising monarchs for a while because out in the wild, your yard, there are so many predators there that want to eat the little tiny caterpillars and want the milkweed for themselves. That in the wild, I think only 3 or 4% of the caterpillars go to adulthood, whereas that number is flipped.
Wow.
So it's 97 or 98% if you raise them and then release them. So right now I have 3 monarch caterpillars munching away on all the milkweed that I am finding around my yard.
Wow.
Those are 2 that I really love. So I guess milkweed is really nectar. But as for an insect, always loved the dragonflies. You know, they look pretty. They're really interesting, and they eat mosquitoes. How could it be better?
Yeah, definitely. I love when they like land on your shoulder or something too. They just like hang out and they'll go for a little ride while you're walking.
Exactly.
It's always fun.
Very good.
Yep. Great. So is there anything else you want to mention or say before I wrap it up? I always just give a chance to say something.
I'm on the Conservation Commission, and tomorrow is Hike Attleboro Day. And I will be there at a table representing the Conservation Commission with all sorts of interesting things to look at, all sorts of guidebooks, and also a butterfly activity for children. So if they want to come out to that, that would be wonderful.
Great.
And I should be there from 9 until noon.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. So that actually leads into my wrapping up remarks, which is that the Hike Attleboro Day is tomorrow. It's starting at 9 and will be based at the Richardson Nature Preserve off Wilmarth Ave. So if you're interested in attending, we definitely would love to see you there. And there'll be a couple other tables there as well, so you can learn about some other community groups. And it'll just be a great time. We'll get to walk in the woods and talk to various folks and just spend some time together to celebrate the trails in Attleboro, which is always a good thing. Great. And I also want to say, if you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, you can go to our the ALT Facebook or YouTube channel to watch those. And also that this is, I mentioned this at the beginning, but this is the final episode. So it's been a real pleasure to be able to interview various folks in the Attleboro community, and for me to get to know them and also to share that with everyone watching. And I think it was a great, Kathi, you were a great person to end with yeah, just a fantastic presentation and so much knowledge. So I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate everyone for joining us and tuning in. So yeah, thank you so much, Kathi, and everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for the kind words.
Of course. All right.